Proverbs, in one sense, setting up that there is an order to the book of Proverbs that may not be as easy for us to immediately discern, but especially when we are able to see that in Hebrew there's certain markers, there's a certain arrangement that can enable us to see that this was indeed a well-designed composition that is given to God's people for the particular purposes that are set out in the first 7 verses. And there we saw that verse 7 could be the propositional statement or the premise of the whole book of Proverbs, all 31 chapters. And that is, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. And this is a Legacy Standard Bible translates the first word, ignorant fools despise wisdom and discipline. Your translation may say, fools despise wisdom and instruction. We have given attention to, first, what does it mean to fear Yahweh? And then second, who is Yahweh that we fear? So we were giving attention to what are the attributes of God that Proverbs especially gives to us and frames the way in which we would think about our lives and fearing God in day-to-day living. But ultimately, we are going to see that what Proverbs is aiming at when someone does come to fear the Lord is that they begin to possess and grow in wisdom. So one definition of wisdom is the skill of godly living. So this might be, if I were going to give you an exam, Kinsey, this would be an exam question. What is wisdom? Here would be the answer that you would write in for the exam. The skill of godly living. All right, Elizabeth, if you were taking the exam, what is wisdom? The skill of godly living. But what Proverbs, you might remember from the introduction, Proverbs unites the sacred and the so-called secular. That is, we don't think about fearing God in Proverbs as only something that would be expressed in formal worship of God. We find in Proverbs that the expression of our fear of God, if we do gain wisdom, it is going to be manifested in day-to-day circumstances and relationships. And so there we see that the skill of godly living is going to be evident in how we relate to people and how we relate to God in the day-to-day. And I can remember one man who I got to be a part of him teaching through Proverbs. He said Proverbs talks about the fear of God in everyday life. And so that's what we're going to make our way through, taking topics that Proverbs gives to us. But one of the things that, again, we're setting up the framework before we get into the most important issue of our hearts, is that Proverbs frames teaching to be domestically centered. This is not to be exclusively domestic. This is not in any way to prohibit that there are formal teachers among God's people, formal teachers in the church, formal teachers in other institutions. But that's just not the ordering of the way in which hearts are addressed in Proverbs. The main instrument or environment for how wisdom is disseminated to others is in the family, in the home. Now, the home might have been probably a little bit bigger than maybe the way we think of the home now, but we're able to see very clearly that it is King Solomon who is attributed the book of Proverbs. And in verse 8, we're able to see that the first command that starts out this first section in Proverbs is very simple. Hear, my son, your father's discipline, and do not abandon your mother's instruction. So we have a son as the representative receiver of instruction from his father, from his mother in the book of Proverbs. And that kind of sets up for us, in one sense, the constant, you might say, equation, you might say, circumstance, that when we hear over and over and over the different instructions in Proverbs, that's what you would fill it out in your mind. That there's going to be verbal instruction that is coming to, we'll see who this, some details to the son, that as it is coming to them, there is a dynamic response that is happening. Now, it might not in any way look or feel or seem dynamic, but Proverbs is going to enable us to understand something actually very significant is happening when a father and a mother give instruction and teaching to their sons. And this is where you go back to verse 4. To give prudence to the simple and to the youth knowledge and discretion. These sayings of understanding, this discipline that leads to insight, righteousness, justice, and equity, it has a target audience, and we see that it's called the simple and the youth. Do you see that in verse 4? And this is necessary for us to set up the significance of the heart. When we think about who does Proverbs in the preamble to the book of Proverbs set as the target audience, it is the youth. So if you're not young, that's okay. Repetition with variety is the key to learning. So I'm hopeful that maybe in the next 50 years of my life, I may gain more wisdom than I have received in the first. So don't not dismiss Proverbs because you're no longer young. But it is very clear Proverbs is written to the youth. Logan, Proverbs is written for you. Now, there's a little bit I would want to say that for Logan, I'm sorry, L, I called you Logan. All right, L for you and for Logan, but there's going to be a difference. Like for you, Luke, and for you, L, there's going to be a little difference between you and Logan. All right, Elizabeth, I put you in a different category. And here's one of the things when Proverbs is going to unfold for us the youth here that it's written to. And that is to say, there is in Proverbs an understanding that there's a period of time when sons are simple-minded. They're naive, they're gullible. And Proverbs sets the equation that God has so designed is that fathers especially, but equally so mothers, they are instructing, they are teaching their children with words how to live a godly life in relationship to people and to God. So, Elle, you've got a lot more time than Logan does to kind of cross the line. Luke, you have more time than Kinsey does. But that doesn't mean that you therefore don't need to pay attention to your father's instruction, your mother's teaching. Proverbs is designed for the simple, the gullible, young, who otherwise are headed for destruction. We'll see that's the way Proverbs talks about the simple. Who are otherwise headed for destruction because of the foolishness that resides natively in their own hearts, that it is going to be through instruction that they actually can become wise, which will have the features, the marks that they will cherish and choose wisdom. They will search for wisdom even when they already have some of it, and they will be teachable, developing a discerning mind, a soft conscience, and righteous character. So, Elle, I'm choosing you. Kinsey, I've chosen you. Luke, I've chosen you. Elizabeth, I've chosen you as examples. You would ask yourself this: am I making the kinds of choices in response to the instruction that my mother and father are given to me such that I am teachable? Am I gaining discernment? Am I having a sensitive conscience to right and wrong? Am I promoting righteous character? If you were saying yes to those, then you are gaining wisdom. But where all of this actually, this dynamic response to teaching, instruction, correction. Where that takes place is in our hearts. It's in your heart. Now, this is where, so if you're visiting, thank you. But I'm going to be quite forward. I am prejudiced towards my youngest students. And in the case of Proverbs, I'm supposed to be prejudiced towards my youngest students. And so for my youngest students, we do need to make some distinctions. When we talk about the heart, at least when we are reading it in the Bible, are we talking about a part of our body? Like I went to see my mother Monday. Her birthday was Sunday, and she's had open heart surgery. So she has a giant scar on her chest because you can literally open up someone's chest and you can work on their heart. Right? When we talk about the heart, are we talking about that organ that my mother had surgery on? Youngest students. All right, excellent. We're not talking about a part of our body. And what we're going to see is we'll go through a few different things when it comes down to what Proverbs teaches us about how we think about ourselves, how we think about men. But what we're going to see, boiling it down, is that a wise heart produces righteous behavior, and a foolish heart produces wicked behavior. What determines righteous living, godly living, and what determines wicked living? Is a real question. This is a real class. What's the determining feature? The heart. The heart. So it's very important that we do need to understand what then is our hearts. Bruce Waltke, I'm not sure. Tim, is he still alive? Do y'all know if Bruce Waltke is still alive? Well, he was an Old Testament scholar, may still be one here on earth. But he's written what is considered to be the most thorough. It's 2 volumes of commentary on the Hebrew text of Proverbs. And he writes, quote, "Human beings are full of God's superiority to them and their dependence upon him, but they differ in their response. The wise, who are righteous, trust and obey. The wicked deny and rail against him. Human responsibility and divine retribution are inseparable." And so what I want to do is that when we are going to be thinking about gaining wisdom, living in a godly way in relationship to people and to God, we really need to understand what is our hearts. Because that's the theater, the arena, the field in which we are responding to instruction. It will be in the heart that we will be able to fear God and gain wisdom. So in one sense, we could say, what's the difference between those who are heaven bound and those who are hell bent? Their hearts. Their hearts. Now in Proverbs, you probably know that Proverbs divides everybody. And so in that sense, we could divide everybody in this room. We could divide everybody in our county. We could divide everybody in our nation, everybody in the world. We could divide them into 2 groups on the basis of their heart. And that is either they're going to fear God and they are going to gain a heart of wisdom, or they are not going to fear God and they will be fools. Right? So Proverbs is going to deal with this sort of very, very helpful and very, very uncomfortable sort of dualistic division of all people. You either are righteous or you are wicked. You are either wise or you are a fool. And children, just to make sure, is how do you like it when your mama and daddy talk to you that way? This is a real class. Like, let's be honest. I'll ask parents, how do you like it when your authorities, whether they are in the church or maybe at work, when they speak to you in sort of a dualistic way? You're either good or bad. You're a winner or a loser. You're either successful or a failure. What's our kind of knee-jerk response to those kinds of?
Mean.
All right, yeah, that's mean. Like, I don't like you categorizing me in either I'm this or I'm that. So I think we're going to find in Proverbs something that doesn't naturally fall very friendly to our native hearts. And so I want you to be able, in that sense, as we learn about your heart, and as we do move forward, and even maybe as you take up the habit of reading the proverb of the day, that you will see, oh, wow, that really does address my heart. I don't like the way I'm either this or that. Now, do we mind when we talk to other people like you're either a fool or you're wise? No, I'm perfectly good with you talking to other people that way. It doesn't bother me a bit. But when it's me, it becomes more personal, doesn't it? Well, we're going to see that Proverbs will do this, but it's going to be aimed at our hearts. Now, there's two complementary aspects to our nature as human beings made in the image of God that Proverbs is going to work with, and that is that we are spiritual and physical. And therefore Proverbs is going to speak about man, about a son, a daughter, in ways that are going to address both of them. And we also are going to see that in Proverbs, the scope of consequences in this material world are going to come from our spiritual condition. So, Proverbs, while it's going to address the difference between material and physical, our bodies and our souls, it's going to address those things. It doesn't divide them as if they're unrelated. It actually unites them such that why do we live the way we live with our bodies? Because of my heart. Why do I live the way I live in this material world? It's the spiritual enterprise of my heart. All right. So Proverbs is going to do that. It even does that as we begin to see the ways that it reveals its description of man. Now, when I say man, Proverbs is primarily written from a man to a young man. And so I would even go so far as to say you actually can't be honest in your study of Proverbs and say, I think this is equally written to men and women. No, it's not. It's written from the king to his son. And therefore, just in case mamas and daddies, when you give instruction to your son, are you going to be giving the exact same instruction that you would give to your daughter? Not on everything, because guess what? Daughters don't marry women. So if you're going to give instruction to a son about marriage, and we have a whole chapter, the last one, that's actually giving instruction to the son. This is the kind of woman that is virtuous, right? That doesn't actually just equally apply to your daughter and what you would be looking for in a husband. Make sense? So it actually is necessary for us to be honest and say Proverbs is framed from a father teaching his son. Now, that being the case, we see mother, we already saw it in verse 8 of chapter 1. It includes instruction from a mother. The information of chapter 31 actually came from the king's mother. So, mamas are definitely involved in the instruction that Proverbs gives, but it does have a target to sons, therefore to young men. But we will find a lot of this wisdom does apply equally to sons and daughters, to men and women. But when I say man right now, I'm not talking about males. I'm just talking about human beings. We do find that Proverbs understands that human beings, men and women, boys and girls, are spiritual, physical beings, and thus we need to understand what that means. This is a little geeky, but it's helpful. Well, here's some of the words that Proverbs uses, and we'll see you're going to have to turn in your Bibles to see it. One of the ways that Proverbs is going to address human beings is just by calling them man, M-A-N. There's two words in Hebrew that can be used to address or used to refer to man. One is you're familiar with. We tend to say Adam. That's not exactly how you pronounce the Hebrew. It's a little different in your what syllable you accent, but we'll do it the same way. It's 44 times in Proverbs is the word Adam used to refer to humankind in general. That's its normal use. But sometimes it's referring explicitly to humans who are male in gender. But it clearly is what is referred in Proverbs. He's going to address men. Here's one, 11, Proverbs 11, verse 7. Now, if you like to mark in your Bible, some of these might be helpful. A wicked man dies. His hope will perish, and the expectation of vigorous men perishes. Now, do you think that is only man is being used there to refer to male human beings? No, it can apply to female human beings. So you're able to see that man is used there just because it's close. Chapter 12, verse 3, a man will not be established by wickedness, but the root of righteousness will not be shaken. Is that male human beings or just human beings in general? General. And yet it is the term Adam. Now there's another word that is used, and this is another Hebrew word, just can mean man, ish. So when you want to call your wife like a tender Hebrew sweet word, you could say isha. All right, come over here. I want to give you a kiss, isha. All right. So ish is man and isha was for woman. All right. So, but ish is used 90 times in Proverbs, and it does usually refer to males of any age. But Proverbs doesn't only speak in this term that is referring to human beings and sometimes males in particular. It addresses that there's a spiritual component to every person. And one of the words that it uses is what is translated soul. And we need to realize this could be not the best way to understand this Hebrew word. Nefesh can mean soul, as we tend to mean soul, but this can be misleading because sometimes you need to translate this Hebrew word as hunger or desire, or maybe even better, self or life, because it refers, quoting a Hebrew scholar, to the passionate drives and appetites of all breathing creatures. When we think about what it means to be a human being, a man, a woman, a boy, or a girl, we have to think about, yes, we do have bodies, but we also have something that marks us, that is an essential aspect of what we are. It is that we have drives, we have desires, we have appetites. And that's really a feature. It's not a bug. It's a part of God's design. And Proverbs is going to do this. Here, let's go to Proverbs 23, verse 2. So you should put a knife to your throat if you are a man of appetite. He translates it man there, but it's referring to this appetite, right? We clearly understand ourselves to be, we have desires. Now we'll read verse 3. Do not desire his delicacies, for it is a bread of falsehood. Who is that? That's when you dine with a ruler. Godly living, when you go to rulers' dinner tables, is you do not get to eat as much as you want. So if you're a man of appetite, you should put a knife to your throat, metaphorically speaking. Another place where we see this use of referring to our passions, our drives as a part of what we are in Proverbs is Proverbs 28, verse 25. An arrogant man stirs up strife, but he who trusts in Yahweh will be enriched. You see that arrogant man there. All right. So that we're going to be able to see that when we think about what is a young man, a youth, a son, he indeed is someone with a desire, with a soul, a significant, and we're just going to not focus on this because we'll probably have a whole night where it's devoted to this, is that sex is a desire that Proverbs affirms very clearly and gives very strong warnings to its inappropriate pursuits, indicating, using this same Hebrew word that's often translated as soul, it's indicating desire. Right? So when you think about what Proverbs is teaching us to think about godly living, we're not talking about part of us. We're not talking about just our bodies. We're talking about the enterprise that includes all of our person. And so soul is not just talking about that we have a spirit, it rather is addressing that we have drives, desires, passions, appetites by nature, and we are to learn how are we to please God, fear God with these appetites. Right? So soul is one of the translations sometimes used for dealing with this aspect of our person that indeed has appetites, desires, drives. Now, in the Psalms, the same word in Psalm 119, verse 20, is not used to desire food or sex or strife, but rather God, right? Clearly indicating kind of a mirror expression. We are designed to desire things. We just need to learn how to do that in a way that would please God. So the basic human nature is that we have passions, and it's therefore a part of life that marks us as human beings, and we need to learn how to fear God or possess wisdom in this life with these desires. Now, we go to another word. This is translated spirit in most cases. It's the Hebrew word that literally could be translated wind or breath, ruach, but that's not how you say it. There's a guttural part to the end of it that I can't really do. And it's used 21 times in Proverbs. But unlike elsewhere in the Old Testament, it is not used to refer to God. God's ruach. Ask Tim to give a better Hebrew pronunciation. Just sounds like I'm clearing my throat. But it's the Hebrew word for spirit. And outside of Proverbs, it is often used to refer to God's spirit. But here it is in Proverbs, it's used to refer to man, to men, women, boys, human beings. Breath is the literal rendering, but that is not its most intended meaning, especially in Proverbs. But metaphorically, it helps us to understand that we indeed are ones who have spirits. And look at Proverbs 14, verse 29, just to see a way in which this word is used. 14:29. He who is slow of anger has great discernment, but he who is quick tempered raises up folly. Now, when you look at quick tempered, that's just short breath. And so, same word. But you can clearly see that the way Proverbs is thinking about human beings is that when you think about what they are, knowing that they are physical, spiritual beings, that their spirits, their ruach, is very much a part of how they operate in the world. And so you could talk about those who are anxious, those who are patient. They're either long breathed or short breath. It's just the spirit is a part of how we are. So when we refer to different aspects of a person, we're going to be referring to their will or to their motives. And in chapter 16, look at verses 2 and 32. All the ways of a man are pure in his own sight, but Yahweh weighs the motives. We're going to be able to see that that's actually referring to our spirit. Now, I'm just giving you different vocabulary words so that you're able to see that the way Proverbs is thinking about our doctrine of man, what we are and how we live and make decisions, it incorporates the totality of our person. We can't divide ourselves thinking like I'm physical and I'm spiritual. And this is going to come down to heart, and we're going to talk about some things that are going to be necessary categorically for us to understand in order for us to gain a heart of wisdom. Because I'm going to assume that you probably have taken some ideas that are from our society, from our culture, which is absolutely in opposition to the way Proverbs is going to present man, the nature of our person. Now, we get down to heart. This is what Bruce Waltke says is the most important word in the Old Testament that explains the nature of mankind. That's quite a statement. He goes on to say it has no English equivalent, but heart in Proverbs is the center control of the whole person. It is the mission control center. All of our lives is contained in the heart. And we could also say all of our lives are a consequence of our hearts. Now, before we do that, we're going to go into a list and look at some individual proverbs, and we'll see what Proverbs attributes to our hearts, both its capacity and what comes from it. I do want you to just stop for a minute. If this is true, if Waltke and the summary is correct, and if our whole lives are contained in our hearts, and at the same time they are a consequence of our hearts, when I look at my life, what am I looking at? Here's some choices, right? Is it A, the result of my circumstances, or is it B, the overflow of my heart? B. All right, so we'll get some more. This is fun, right? So parents, when you are impatient with your children, it's because of your children. True or false? Don't I wish? Don't I wish? All right, children. Children. When you are angry with your mom and dad because they tell you what to do, the reason that you are angry with your mom and dad is because they don't tell you the good things to do. True or false? That's false. The reason that parents are impatient and children are angry is because of their hearts. So this is going to do something for us. One, we're not going to come out of the study of Proverbs looking all bright and shiny as far as like the holiness of our hearts is going to be concerned. We're going to come out and we're going to say, "Oh, I can't blame my sins on somebody else. I can't blame the fact that I'm not living in a godly way in this area of my life or this relationship in my life or when these circumstances happen in my life. I'm not able to attribute it to something outside of my what? Heart. That means I now have to accept personal responsibility for the enterprise of my heart, as well as responsibility and the consequences of my behavior and the way I acted towards other people. That's tough, isn't it? That's tough. Because what do sinners, when they don't fear God and they don't live godly, they don't walk wisely, what do? They sin against other people. So they're going to have to accept responsibility for that. It's a good thing that Jesus, the ultimate son of David, is not only the all-wise one, but he is the righteous one who died for us. So when we are going to be looking at our hearts so that we might gain a heart of wisdom, we do so knowing that we have Jesus Christ. So you shouldn't, Christian, you should not feel condemned. You should not be discouraged. You should praise God that Jesus died for all of your sins, even the ones that you're coming to think, whoa, I didn't realize that's a sin too, and that's a sin too, and that's a sin too, and I'm to blame there, and I'm to blame there. So we have the Savior. But it does tell us where we have to look in order to live godly. All right, here's some things that Proverbs teaches us about our hearts. First, our hearts control our bodies. I do want you to turn there. Proverbs 15. I'm going to read it out loud. Sometimes I might call you to read it out loud. Proverbs 15, verses 13 and verse 28. Eric Wells, would you read both of those for us?
Heart is sad, spirit many. Heart of the righteous wonders how to answer.
All right, so here's the question for my students, and again, I prefer the younger students. What parts of the body are controlled by the heart in these two proverbs? That's right. So you might remember in when we read in the Old Testament, this particular it's a way of talking that even it comes to that the Lord will say this: "Why is your face fallen?" That's actually it is literally describing the face, but it's describing what else? The heart. The heart. This is why children they before they sort of develop kind of skills to be fakers and hypocrites, like their face immediately shows what's going on in their heart. And their face will immediately fall, literally, when they are unhappy about something. All right, that's what the Bible teaches. Proverbs 15:13. Go to Proverbs 4. Proverbs 4, we have an extended section starting in verse 23, reading through verse 27. Scott, I'm going to ask you to read this. Proverbs 4:23 through 27.
4:23. Guard your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life. Put away from you a perverse mouth, and put devious lips far from you. Let your eyes look directly ahead, even let your eyelids be fixed straight in front of you. Watch the track of your feet, and all your ways will be established. Do not turn to the right nor to the left. Turn your foot from.
All right, so we definitely have some body parts that are described here, don't we? A mouth, lips, eyes, eyelids, feet. But all of those, the reason that they look what they look at and walk where they walk and wag what they wag are because what's controlling them? The hearts. All right, so kids, here's another one. Here's another one that you're going to answer true or false. If I say something to anyone in my family, like, I can't stand it when you do that. And then I say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Is it true or false that I didn't mean that? False. False. If it came out of my mouth, it first was in my heart. Right? So my lips, my mouth, that part of my body, and all that's involved in order for me to say what I say is ultimately the outworking of my hearts. Our hearts control our bodies. Now, I think you have some others. You could also look at Proverbs 6, verse 18. We also see that our hearts control our mind, affections, or emotions. All right. So I'm putting all these together, and this is definitely a sacred cow. Very, very sacred for Americans today, as even Christian Americans, to think your emotions don't really come from your volitional choices. Or to say it another way, we're not responsible for our emotions. All right, so let's see what Proverbs thinks about this. I want you to turn to Proverbs 17. Proverbs 17. I want you to read verse 3. Proverbs 17:3. Bo, could you read that?
Crucible is for silver.
All right. So here what does the Lord test? Hearts. All right. So we're gonna see that the heart is something that the Lord tests. Now go to Proverbs 24, verse 12. Bo, I'm gonna ask you to read this as well.
You say, behold, we did not know this. That's not he who weighs the heart perceive it. Not he who keeps watch over your soul know it. Will he not repay man according to his work?
All right. So someone says, I didn't know this. Well, who actually is testing, weighing, judging what actually is true in their hearts? Is it on the basis of what they said? Who actually is knowing the heart? God. All right, the Lord. Now we're going to go and see that this includes some emotions. Go to 12, Proverbs 12, verse 25. Peter, I'm going to ask you to read Proverbs 12, verse 25.
Anxiety in the heart of man causes depression. The word makes it.
All right. So if the Lord actually he's weighing the heart, he's testing the heart, and if anxiety is in our heart, weighing it down, being depressed, who is able to know, to test, to discern, to judge, why am I anxious? The Lord. The Lord. Now, if the Lord does that, that's not just an aspect of the Lord in his omniscience. It's not just God who knows everything, knows why I am anxious. He actually judges my heart as to why. Why am I anxious? Why does this anxiety in the heart weigh it down? All right. So the operation of anxiety is an operation of the heart, and the Lord is the one who sees and judges our hearts. Here's another proverb, Proverb 14:10. The heart knows its own bitterness, and a stranger does not share its gladness. That's another emotion. It's in the heart that this bitterness is present. Does the stranger know it? In the proverb, he does not. But the bitterness that would be in our heart, the Lord would be able to see it. Proverbs 15:15. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but a good heart has a continual feast. And so, if your heart is happy, right, that's what a good heart does, and a continual feast, right? That's that enterprise that we would attribute to affections or to emotions it's an operation of the heart. And the heart is not something that is not volitional, meaning It's not something that we're not responsible for what actually our heart does. So in Proverbs, emotions are an aspect of what our heart does. So whether that's anxiety or bitterness or happiness, that's coming from our hearts. Our hearts also think. Look at 24, verse 12. Now, this is how we are able to see in English, there's not a singular word that we can use to effectively communicate what the Hebrew word heart is able to convey. So we would think of, if you're thinking, you're only using your brain, or we might say mind. But in Hebrew, to talk of a heart is to talk about thinking, pondering. 24, verse 12. If you say, behold, we did not know this, does not he who weighs the hearts understand? So where do you say, behold, we did not know this? What would we call that an operation of? Your mind. And we tend to locate that in the brain. In Proverbs, that's actually an operation of our hearts. Our hearts. So our hearts, they think, they interpret. Our hearts ponder. Our hearts also discern. Look at Proverbs 2, verse 10. Proverbs 2, verse 10. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will keep you, discernment will guard you. How are you going to have discretion and discernment? From wisdom entering your heart. So, what we need to understand is that the heart operates in such a way that we need to think about the totality of our person as really being what we're talking about when we say our hearts. Mission control center. Everything that we do is the outworking of our heart. Here's another thing Proverbs tells us about our hearts. Our hearts plan. Proverbs 16:14. Our hearts plan. The one who turns back in his heart will be satisfied with his ways, but a good man will be satisfied with his. So if you turn back, if you turn back, what did you do? You changed your mind. The one who turns back his heart will be satisfied with his ways, but a good man will be satisfied with his. The decision to turn back is the operation of the heart. That was a plan. 18, Proverbs 18, verse 9. He also who is slack in his work is brother to him who destroys. Right there, we're able to see. I think I got that one wrong. 18:9. I have to double check. That doesn't seem to be right.
18:9 is correct. The previous.
You said 16:14.
Hmm. Yeah, 16:14. The one who turns back in his heart. Yours doesn't say that? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. 14:14. Thank you. 14:14. The one who turns back in heart will be satisfied with his ways. 14:14. So the heart discerns, it prompts us to act, it plans. Waltke says it is the inner forum of man where the decision is made. The inner forum of man where the decision is made. So let's just say true or false. Every decision that I make is the result of the operation of my heart. True or false? True. That's the work of my heart. That's what the heart does. The heart also, it controls our spiritual actions and attitudes. Go to Proverbs 3:5. This is one that you probably memorized. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your what? Heart. If you trust in Yahweh, is that a religious, spiritual enterprise, action? Is that spiritual? Absolutely. Absolutely. So in Proverbs, our hearts are controlling our spiritual actions and attitudes. We can go on to look at Proverbs 15:14. Proverbs 15:14. The heart of the one who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on folly. So when you think of seeking knowledge, would you say that's a religious and spiritual enterprise? And who is the one who seeks knowledge? The one whose heart already has understanding. And so the heart is, in one sense, the way in which the book of Proverbs and the Bible talks about our mission control center through which we actually engage in our spiritual actions and attitudes. I'm just going to read some others. Proverbs 6:25 talks about our hearts are involved in evil, such as coveting. Proverbs 23, verse 17 tells us that our hearts are involved when we envy. But positively, Proverbs 15, verse 14 says that our hearts are involved in knowledge, as we just saw. That's good. But they also, our hearts are involved when we do bad. So things like desire, remorse, regret, and shame are enterprises of our hearts. Now, our heart is, we're going to say, the center of man upon which the wise appeal and argue for one to fear God by teaching him or her. We're going to conclude here. Verse 1 of chapter 3. My son, do not forget my law, but let your heart guard my commandments. Now, you could go to many other passages to see the same. But to what does the Father appeal? To his heart. Right? To his heart. Let your heart guard my commandments. Right? That clearly we know involves thinking, pondering, remembering, but it's not just thinking. It's not just information. It's, in that sense, it's mission control center. The heart is actually what has to respond to receive wisdom through instruction. That's the way Proverbs tells us any fool, any young, any simple, they actually can gain wisdom if they in their hearts will respond to the instruction that they are being given in their hearts. So, in summary, Proverbs teaches us that we are creatures of the heart. Then we are creatures of habit. Proverbs makes very clear that hearts direct our habits, and therefore our habits are reflecting what is going on in our hearts. And if God, by his grace, works through others instructing us so that in our hearts we fear God, what will be the consequence? It's a real question. You will gain wisdom. You will gain wisdom. For our behavior to be changed, according to Proverbs, what must change? Our hearts. Hearts. Now, when we go through a number of practical subjects, so we'll do, all of the big ones: sex, money, power. We'll do parenting. We will do we'll do peers. I mean, we're going to cover speech. We're going to cover lots of practical things. Is it moralistic teaching? Is it do this so that God will like you? Or do this so that God may favor you? Or don't do this so that you might earn acceptance with God? Is that the way Proverbs is teaching us? No. Proverbs is teaching us that our hearts, this mission control center, is responding to instruction and correction because we fear God, and therefore we are seeking to gain a heart of wisdom. So the heart of man, that's what is sovereign over our lives. It indicates our worship and to whom we are loyal, but God is still sovereign over our hearts, judges us with perfect knowledge of our hearts, and teaches us in our hearts to know the true indicator of fearing him and loving him most. But for us to address godly living, we must address our hearts. So, any questions on the heart? John.
I think it's less a question as this, especially with that chapter 3, verse 1 there, it says, but like a heart guard my commandment. That speaks, I think, of toward this thing that it's a conscious, deliberate effort to evaluate the things that are in your heart.
Yeah.
So that makes it harder to separate, but it makes it inclusive. It's an inclusive act. As we ponder, discern, think through, instead of an emotional, what do we call that response that you have? Reactive, reflexive response. But because there are degrees, there are shades of the things that we have to think out regarding God's law,
Mm-hmm.
and how they apply and how we apply them, so that you can't say, hey, I don't like it when you do that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Then it becomes about delivery, and also about how we receive what we've heard too, the way that we hear things,
Mm-hmm.
through the filter of God's word, and the wisdom that He fills us with, because we invest ourselves His wisdom through His.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot there. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Here's one. One of the things that has perplexed me is how come some Christians that I have known, who are relatively ignorant compared to other Christians who I have known, who have been amazing in their knowledge of Scripture and theology, how come some of the less knowledgeable Christians live more godly lives than some of the more knowledgeable Christians? That's not to equate knowledge is necessarily the problem, but that confused me for a while. And I think Proverbs has helped me to understand the difference is because for some, they fear God in their hearts, and therefore, while they may have less instruction, they actually are responding rightly to the instruction that they have. And then others, they have a lot, but their response to that is not what it should be. So I think it does help us to see that we really do need to give attention to how we are responding in our hearts to the instruction that God gives. And then others can be fast. I just feel like I am a turtle. Like if ever, life moves really fast, and I find to slow down and try to engage my heart's response to God in these day-to-day circumstances. Now, that's where knowledge would be really helpful. it was more quickly able to be brought to mind, and I could trust God and respond to his instruction, that would help. But I do think this heart is impossible to overemphasize when it comes to how Proverbs will teach us to live a godly life. It's very encouraging. So, Quinn, not to put you on the spot, but I could say it to any new Christian. If you're a new Christian, if you in your heart fear God and you respond to his teaching, then the progress in gaining wisdom is amazingly fast. And it's sort of like you can meet some people and it was like, I don't even recognize you compared to the way you were a year or 2 years ago. It's because they're hard. So hard to overemphasize the significance of our heart. Well, we're dismissed. If you have questions, come and ask me afterwards. Thanks for enduring tonight. We will move on to a new topic next week. Oh, that's right. Thank you. Robin and Gigi Brown will be here. We will not be in Proverbs. We'll be meeting at 6, bringing food to share, and we will be learning about Robin's ministry in South Africa. So next, we're going to have tables, all right? Next Wednesday, 6 o'clock, we're going to have tables set up here. Everything will take place from the tables. So
There's some snacks out back. If anybody's interested.
sweet. Thanks, Julianne.
Yeah,
Oh.